The Boston Herald is reporting a Black Lives Matter activist in Boston now indicted for fraud, accused of laundering 2020 charity donations. The federal indictment says Monica Cannon Grant, who was one of the leading voices at the Boston anti-violence nonprofit, and her husband are now facing 18 charges, including wire fraud, mail fraud, and making false statements to a mortgage lending business. Now, this all comes as the IRS filings, recent ones, show Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrisse Cullors used charity funds to pay her brother and her child's father hundreds of thousands of dollars for some questionable services. She's also accused of using funds to buy a lavish Los Angeles estate, which we've seen photos of. Cullors responding to the allegations, saying her mistakes with the, quote, white guilt money were weaponized against her. Joining us now to discuss our panelists here, we're joined by Republican strategist and former chairwoman of the GOP, Jennifer Nassour. Also with us, Newsmax contributor Tom Borelli, alongside Director of Membership Development for the Project 21 Black Leadership Network, Donna Jackson. Panelists, thank you so much for coming on today. A lot to get to when it comes to following the money, right? Donna Jackson, we'll start with you. Just your thoughts on really sort of the lack of transparency when it comes to all those financial donations to the BLM movement and where they actually ended up.
You know, I'm not surprised. This is a shady organization with shady ideals and fraudulent business practices. This is a trend across the country. It's not just in Los Angeles, in California. It's not just in Boston. It's been in Memphis. It's been in Washington State. It's been all across the country, and they have actually used this narrative of white supremacy in order to dupe people out of their money. They have zero presence in any African-American community in terms of providing charitable services. And so people shouldn't be surprised that the only Black people that's been enriched is their family members.
You know, Tom, I think back to, friends maybe on social media who posted during the summer of 2020 about social justice, and also that they were publicly saying, I'm donating to the BLM organization. Do they really have an answer as to where that money went? As Donna was pointing out, we're still kind of wondering how many Black communities actually benefited from those donations that were meant to assist Black communities.
Yes, Emma, that's the key question. A lot of people actually were duped into donating to this organization based on pure emotion without really knowing where the money's going. Now, through the IRS 990 tax forms, we're seeing where the money went. And in your introduction, you mentioned they bought a $6 million home for the organization in LA, where Cullors had two parties, including one for her son, and over $800,000 to her brother's security firm. So clearly the money wasn't going to where it was supposed to. I guess P.T. Barnum was right when he says there's a sucker born every second, where here we have $90 million of suckers, because that's what the group took in that year. And there's also a political overhang here. Black Lives Matter also lobbied to get President Trump impeached. President Trump was the best thing for Black people in America, but Black Lives Matter, they're all about advocacy, and it looks like they're all about themselves.
We're going to keep an eye on this story and follow the money. That's always interesting. You got to ask those follow-up questions. Jennifer, let me pivot with you to another topic that's on the minds of a lot of voters. This has to do with the future of abortion access in various states across the country following the potential overturn of Roe v. Wade. We learned just recently that Oklahoma lawmakers had passed one of the nation's most restrictive abortion laws, banning the procedure from the stage of fertilization. It also allows private citizens to sue abortion providers who knowingly perform or induce an abortion on a pregnant woman. The White House did have a strong response to this. Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, sending out this statement saying action by the Oklahoma legislature is the most extreme effort to undo these fundamental rights we have seen to date. This is part of a growing effort by ultra-MAGA officials across the country to roll back the freedoms we should not take for granted in this country. Jennifer, your thoughts?
So I find it really interesting that the White House has the gall to talk about rolling back freedoms that we all enjoy in the United States. Because I, for one, as a parent of 3 school-age kids, have a big problem with the White House instituting all of their things, all their policies that they think that I, as a parent, should be listening to. But it's more important on this front. And so if we're going to talk about rolling back freedoms, let's talk about vaccine mandates. Let's talk about mask mandates. Let's talk about kids being out of school. Let's talk about the fact that public school educators are teaching our kids about having a choice of their gender. Let's talk about all of those other things, because that, to me, should be the central focus right here for the White House and any social policies that they want to put forward, is how they're taking away rights of parents. And so she had absolutely no right. I find it to be completely out of line. But actually, for this White House and this administration, that is exactly what they are. They are hypocrites.
One thing to note of this Oklahoma bill, it would allow exceptions for women who are undergoing medical emergencies during their pregnancy, and then also exceptions for pregnancy which was a result of rape, sexual assault, or incest as well. Donna, we've already seen some protests gathering outside of the justices' homes when it comes to that Supreme Court ruling. Again, it hasn't come out. The final decision has not. But the DHS now also sending out a memo anticipating violence when the final decision does come out. How do you expect this plays out?
You know, I think that the fact that people are protesting outside of the justices is despicable. And I'm sure that there will be violence, but we need to make sure that we understand something. They're trying to use this ultra MAGA to gin up the violence. They want the George Floyd protest that they had during the Donald Trump era. They want this division, and the abortion industry actually targets African Americans. They never bring that up. 70% of all abortion clinics are located in Black communities, despite the fact that we only make up 12.4% of the population. So none of this is about women's right or them even caring about it. They care about trying to sow division so they can win an election. And they're using this as the basis to get that rhetoric started so that people will just go by their emotions.
They still haven't found the leaker to the Supreme Court draft leak. I'm still waiting for answers there, and of course would hope no violence would occur, just peaceful protest if you were to voice opposition, but not outside the justices' homes. All right, Jennifer Naswar, Tom Borelli, and Donna Jackson, thank you, panel, for joining me this Friday.